Eagles. Eagles.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome into a Birds 365, a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. A lot of technical errors.
Yeah, man. I got no backgrounds.
They got Johnny Mac's got no background. He's got the green screen behind him.
Whoa.
Mike Gill's already in the studio. We got all sorts of tech issues this morning to get us off to a quick start. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning?
I'm all askew because I need my live casino background, and it's there, but it won't put it behind me. So for those who think I do it outside live casino, I don't. You're seeing the behind the scenes green screen. Yeah, askew.
A little behind.
Hopefully the Eagles play.
Hopefully everybody can hear us, by the way. I'm just assuming they can hear us, but let me just double check to make sure we're streaming through on YouTube and you guys can hear us. Can I get a confirmation in the chat from everybody? By the way, we appreciate, John. We got some loyal followers of the show. We already had 45 likes even before we went live because the great people were waiting for us in the chat, and I was alerting them to our technical errors, and everybody says they can hear us, so that's good stuff. Johnny Mac still looking good with the green background. I like it. A Kelly green screen, Joe Whip says. I like that. We got Mike Gill in the green room. We'll bring Mike Gill up real quick in just about a couple minutes. John, I just wanted to get real quick your take on, what we kind of learned yesterday. You were down there at the NovaCare complex. Looks to me like Jordan Mailata is going to play. Not sure. What can you tell us about where the Eagles are before this Thursday night game?
Yeah, a little surprised by that, to be honest, considering, just the timing and the fact that you don't have any real practice this week. And I speculated when Jordan was on injured reserve, he'd probably come back for the Rams game because you have the mini bye, then you have a full week of practice. But, he's at the point of his career where he's a deference player. And if he's ready to go, they're going to play him. And it's, they waived Jack Stoll for those who don't know. So they opened up a roster spot and didn't fill it. So you can do the math. Jordan Mailata has been a full participant, estimated through the walkthroughs of the week. So he wouldn't quite confirm it yesterday outside the locker room, but all signs point to Jordan Mailata being back Thursday night against the Washington Commanders with first place on the line.
Good stuff there. We'll see. And then they released Jack Stoll, which kind of insinuates they opened up that roster spot, right? Presumably.
Yeah, that's for Jordan. That's what I just mentioned. I mean, that's pretty clear. They didn't fill it, so do the math.
Yeah,
that's for Jordan Mailata.
Good stuff there. Jordan Mailata looks like he will be back to play here. 8:20 already, John. We missed our opening segment. Oh, wow. Appreciate everybody in the chat already, though. 55 likes. Appreciate all you guys. Hit that like button. Sorry for being late. I'm going to let John go at 10, and I will give you an extra 15 minutes of Birds 365 so we make sure we deliver you 2 hours like we do every single weekday. We appreciate you all for being here. Let's bring in the great Mike Gill joining us now on Birds 365. Mike, good morning, my friend. How you doing on this Wednesday morning, man?
Ready to roll, man. We're on the eve of a big game. It's the first time these two teams have played of any substance in about 30 years.
That's true, man.
Boy, the Commanders have gone through a rough stretch. For old people like me, you remember the Joe Gibbs era when this was one of the best rivalries and the biggest rivalries because Washington was so good and winning 3 Super Bowls. And it's been a long time. You're right, Mike. And
28 years. John Clark tweeted this out. 28 years that both teams were at least 4 games over 500 when they have played each other.
Yeah.
Wow.
That tells you how quick, it's been, it tells you 2 things, right? It tells you if you got bad ownership, you're probably in a bad position in the NFL. And then it tells you when you fix things, you can turn it around quickly if you make the right decisions. So some good and some bad with that. But Dan Quinn's already got him going on a right direction. Looks like they hit a home run with Jayden Daniels. Are they ready, though, Mike? Are they ready for this type of game? Or do you have to learn to go through this type of environment before you can really I don't know if you want to say shrink on the big stage, but sometimes you got to learn it.
This is one of those things where, you apply for a job and they say you don't have any experience. Well, how do I get experience if I can't get the job? Here's Washington. Take us serious. Take us serious. Well, how can I take you serious if you really haven't beaten anybody? And that's kind of where they are. Their wins have come against, their losses have come against, a Pittsburgh team that's pretty solid, a Baltimore team that's, pretty good. They lost to Tampa earlier this year when Tampa was pretty good. So their 3 losses are against teams that are a little step up in competition. Most of their wins are against lesser opponents. Now, when you have, it's funny because they got this quarterback, and they were the team, you do this exercise in the offseason, which team can go from worst to first. And they were one of the teams that I said, well, if the quarterback is their version of C.J. Stroud that just changes the whole team, maybe they could be that team because Dallas looked like they were stumbling. Philly, you didn't know if they were going to come out of that malaise from last year. Right. And it seems that they got the quarterback so far. Now, last week, interesting part about them is, and I talked about this with you yesterday, John, on my show, which is Pittsburgh blitzed them 53% of the time. And Jayden Daniels looked like average guy. I mean, he completed 50% of his passes. They sacked him a whole heck of a bunch. He missed a couple of open throws that really changed the complexion of that game. So it's the first time he stepped up in pressure and had some problems. Because when you look around, to go back to your question, they don't have a whole heck of a lot. Like, they got McLaurin, and then after that, they don't have a whole heck of a lot of guys that scare you on that offense. Their offensive line's not great. There's not a guy on defense that just stands out like, how are we going to figure out what to do with this guy? So this will be the first opportunity for them to be in prime time and in a game that's meaningful. You're playing a division game with first place on the line. If Philadelphia wins, 77% chance for them to win the division. And if they lose this game, I'm telling you, man, Washington.
Oh, it's right back. Yeah, it's right
Washington does not have very many losable games left on the schedule. In fact, in my estimation, the only 2 losable games they have on the schedule are the 2 Philadelphia games. I think they can go 5-2 the rest of the way, which would get them to 12 wins. And that's with losing both Philadelphia games. They have 1 game against Atlanta late in the year that they might have some problems with. But other than that, I think Washington can get to 11 or 12 wins. That's what makes this game tomorrow so important.
Yeah, it is a good one, and you brought up some good storylines there, Mike. Let me ask you about the Eagles though, because Washington is 7-0 versus teams under 500, and 0-3 against teams above 500. Well, the Eagles are kind of in the same boat. If you look at the win percentage of the Eagles' last 5 opponents that they're 5-0 against, it's not necessarily a murderer's row. Where are you on the Eagles right now with? Are they finding their stride, or are you kind of still cautious because of the opponents that they've played?
I mean, look, I think most people are cautious because of what happened last year. I think it's evident that they're not that team anymore. I mean, that team last year was an embarrassment. They were just giving up chunks of yards on drive after drive. The offense just couldn't figure out any way to get anything going. This team this year, they're not giving up chunks of yards. Is their defense the 85 Bears? No, but they're not a complete joke. I mean, this defense is solid. They need to prove it against better quality of competition. I think the Bengals game, we go back to that Bengals game and what they did there. I think we need to take a closer look at what they did in that Bengals game and maybe raise the level of defense up. But I think one of the reasons why we're questioning who the Eagles are has to do more with what happened at the end of last year than the reality of what they are. And they don't look anything like the team over the last 7 games. I mean, let's be clear. That team looked like they had a zombie overtake them and just completely. I've never seen anything like it. They don't resemble that team at all. So I think Philadelphia has the benefit of the doubt that they've been this team for the most part of our existence, for the last 20 years anyway. Yeah. This is who they've been. So I don't know that they have as much to prove as Washington does. But I know a lot of people watching and a lot of people who consume Eagles stuff still want to see more. They want to see those aesthetically pleasing games, and they want to see them against better competition.
Yeah, you and I have talked about that a lot over the years, and you mentioned it with Washington as well. If Mike, if you don't consider anybody, and by that I mean if you think everybody stinks, well, you can't beat anybody. It is the NFL. You talked about the Commander schedule. I'm not as I don't think New Orleans is a sure thing out on the road with Derek Carr. Maybe they're a sure thing on the road with Spencer Rattler, but Derek Carr's back.
Yeah.
I don't think Atlanta's a playoff team. I mean, Kirk Cousins is back. He's having a great year. Look at Darnell Mooney and Drake London's statistics. I could have predicted that. I've been talking about it for years.
I think they'll be favored in the games. Yeah. That doesn't mean they're going to win them. I think there's, a couple games where, the New Orleans ones changes a little bit because of Carr coming back. They've been such a disaster, and now they actually won against Atlanta last week. So maybe they've turned the corner a bit.
And we went through this in 2022 with the Eagles. Who'd they beat? Yep. Well, if nobody, and over this stretch, another 5-game winning streak, which is unbelievable when you talk about Nick Sirianni and his career. By the way, now in the top 10 of all-time coaches in the NFL for a winning percentage, but let's fire the guy. But I digress. Another 5-game winning streak, but everybody looks at that and says, well, it's the Giants, it's the Cowboys with Cooper Rush. Cincinnati's the best team that they were able to beat. And that's a somewhat meaningful win on the road, place they've never won before. But you can make the same argument with the Eagles. Who have they beaten? But you can make that same argument with Detroit and everybody else because everybody thinks nobody's nobody. It's the NFL. It's hard to win.
If you had a schedule and the Eagles have 7 wins and you said they beat this team, this team, this team, this team, this team, and this team, the 7 teams that you want to list, and that were the only 7 teams you'd be impressed by. Anybody else, you're almost like, if you try to pick out who are the 5 best teams right now, you have a big drop-off after about 3, maybe 4.
I think you can get to 5. I think you can get to 5. I can get to 6.
You got Kansas City, Detroit, Buffalo. I guess people are throwing Baltimore in there.
And I can get to 6. I still think Green Bay is very good.
Yeah, they are.
Do. A lot of people will downplay Minnesota because of Sam Darnold, and after watching last week, I can't blame them. But
you have Pittsburgh. Is very good defensively. The quarterback has the offense is scoring 30 points a game now with Russell Wilson. I know it doesn't look great, but they're scoring 30 points a game. Do you put them in that mix there? San Francisco, I think, is lurking.
Yeah, San Francisco scares me. I say that all the time.
They're lurking. Green Bay,
Rams. I'm like,
but don't the 49ers kind of have an uphill battle over there in the West? Isn't that?
Well, sure, but I think
They feel like the team that gets in, they're either the 4 seed or like the 5, and you're stuck with them in the middle of the field, and you're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, you're like, I don't want to. I'd be doing some wrangling if I were end of the season. I knew if I don't want to play San Francisco. I would. A lot of teams.
Or San Francisco is that team that we just keep giving the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, that's it. I freely
losing.
admit I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I freely admit that. But if
they
I'm
have a lot of good players on that team, though. I mean,
like I remember 2018. I talk about this all the time. The Eagles, there was a chance they weren't going to make the playoffs coming off the Super Bowl, going into the final week of the season. Chicago was a very good team that year, and They could have lost to Minnesota in week 18 and played them the very next week. They could have sat all their starters, and they were just better. They were just more. They would run. That was the Eric Wilson, for those who remember him with the bike. That he was playing middle linebacker, and the Bears just ran over him. And I'm like, they're going to have to play the Eagles. This is a dumb decision, but they wanted to. But you blow out their chest and say, we don't care. We're good. And look, it was a very competitive game. It had to be a double doink, but they lost.
Yeah.
They would have boat raced Minnesota, but they had too much pride and too much hubris. Too many coaches are like that. I get it from one perspective, in that you want to be competent and say you can beat everybody. But there's competence and there's stupidity. If you got a better matchup, take the better matchup.
I tell you, it's hard to lose a game on purpose sometimes. People think it's so easy, but you got guys out
I don't
there.
even say that. I'm saying play your backups, and if you win, you win.
Yeah,
you're trying to win the game.
Exactly, because then you're telling guys don't play your best, or
I
don't
don't.
that way. For the most part.
But you game the system. You say, well, I'm going to start the backup quarterback.
Yeah, you could definitely make it where you're saying, hey, our starters are sitting out this week, and we'll play who we end up playing. But look, this week here is very important, and there's a couple things. Philadelphia, all of a sudden, that last week, it's amazing how things flip and crazy in the NFL after 1 or 2 weeks. You win, Washington loses, you go from the bottom half of the wild card up to the number 2 spot now, and now you're nipping on the heels of Detroit, and you're watching that game on Sunday night thinking, man, if Detroit loses this game, you're both sitting there with the same mark with the 2 losses, and you're thinking, all right, now we're in play for a number 1 seed, where before the day started, you're sitting at the bottom of the wild card. So this game on Thursday night adds up to the same thing. You win this game, you're now 2 losses ahead of Washington, and you would have beaten them 1 time. So it really changes the dynamics of who ends up winning this game. Because if you remember, and that doesn't mean it's over by any stretch of the imagination. If you remember last year, the Eagles were 10-1. They had beaten Dallas on that, down there on that play where Dak, slides short of the goal line and goes out of bounds. They throw the pass short of the goal line. And it looked like the Dallas was insurmountable to get back into the race, and then Philadelphia just completely crashed. So outside of something like that happen, having a 2-game lead with 6 games left to go, if you think you're a really legitimate team, you got to feel pretty good. So I think this Thursday night match is imperative for Philadelphia to get.
Yeah. Well,
Mike, how do you view Jayden Daniels? I mean, how do you view Jayden Daniels? He's a rookie. He looks pretty good. There's been a couple games where he hasn't exactly flattered me. Like you mentioned, Steelers. I didn't think he was great in that Bears game where they kind of won on a magical Hail Mary. A lot of hype going around Jayden Daniels. Ron Jaworski said yesterday he's the greatest rookie quarterback he's ever seen in his life. How do you view Jayden coming into this game?
I like him a lot. I loved him coming out of the draft. I liked him more than I didn't like Caleb Williams a lot. I acknowledge he has a lot of talent, but not the kind of guy that I want leading my organization. Daniels is the opposite. He always, he looks just always calm. Like Ranger Suarez, when he pitches, no heartbeat. That's what Jayden Daniels looks like. He's never even when there's pressure and maybe he doesn't make the play, he doesn't look like he's speeding up because of the pressure. I think if he had better talent around him, I think that's one thing with Washington right now. They don't have a lot. I mean, they just have, McLaurin is a very good number 1 receiver. He's not that, A.J. Brown 1A. I think he's on that second tier of the receiving. Zach Ertz is probably still one of their top targets. Zach's very good, but he's, obviously a little bit at advanced age now. He's not the same guy that he was in Philadelphia. Noah Brown, McConkey's all right. I mean, he's a rookie. They don't have a whole – I think when he gets a better assortment of stuff, they run the ball pretty well. They have kind of – their running backs are all kind of dual threat kind of guys. Eckler, people who remember him with the Chargers.
Yep.
Brian Robinson, don't know if he's going to play in the game, but he's given the Eagles some problems. I think Daniels is going to be excellent, and it's because he seems like the game's not moving too fast for him. He doesn't move too fast. He doesn't rush when the pressure comes. He just kind of, okay, I'm going to take this sack. He doesn't make mistakes because of it. So I liked him a lot coming into the draft. If I'm Chicago, I'm killing myself right now. If I'm New York, I'm going back to that clip and saying, we talked about getting this guy. Why didn't we do it with what we got stuck with? Remember that draft where they were talking about they had Daniels in the room. They didn't get it.
And remember the clip of the GM's son who's like, and he asked his kids, he's like, who would you guys take? And then one son's like, go for it, take Jayden Daniels. And he's like,
yeah, he's like, you only get one chance to do this. And they missed it. Now, listen, they didn't get, he was the second pick in the draft. I like him a lot. And I think Washington, now listen, you remember 10, 15 years ago, Robert Griffin III came in as a rookie. Now, he ended up getting hurt, and that kind of ruined his thing. That's the only thing with Jayden Daniels. He's kind of small, and if he keeps taking some hits here, he already hurt the ribs. He did play the next week there, but can he withstand the week in and week out? But I think other than that, this Washington team they will be the next it should be Philly and Washington here for the next couple of years.
Oh, yeah. It's flipped to – it's always been it seems like it's been a two-team division for – a decade plus. It's still a two-team division, but Washington has shifted places with Dallas.
They were debating yesterday of the two teams, Dallas and New York, who's got a better outlook. And I was like, geez.
It's tough to add. I mean, Dallas does, or at least short term.
Right. You're gonna get Dak Prescott.
You're
back.
Gonna get Dak back,
and at least that gets you to be probably like an 8-9 team. If
I
think they probably would have been in that realm had Dak stayed healthy this year. Without him, I can't believe how bad they were without him. The drop off was unbelievable. I can't believe that Cooper Rush has won 5 games in this league as a quarterback.
Yeah. Well, he won them in 2022 when Dallas was really good, so he could just manage the game, and they could win in other ways. They could run the football. They could do different things. They could manage the game. They can't do that now. They don't have. Now he's got to make some plays, and he's incapable of making plays, so it's a little bit different. But with Jayden Daniels, I don't know if I'm going to call him the greatest rookie quarterback of all time. Is he better than C.J. Stroud? You don't even have to go back that far. Maybe, maybe not.
Well, C.J. I think is taking a step back with the lack of weapons.
But my point is, does everyone expect quarterbacks not to have bad games or mediocre games? Or, I mean, even the best Patrick Mahomes, look at some of the games he's had this year.
Yeah.
They're winning games. I mean, I don't get the expectations of people. Of course, he's not going to look like the best player in the history of the world every single week. But even if you look at the losses, all right, Tampa Bay was very good early in the season, as you mentioned, Mike. I think a little bit better than people expected till all the injuries took hold. They got blown out of that game. That's it. They lost by 1 score to the Ravens, 30-23. But a lot of people, me included, think the Ravens have the most talented team in football from top to bottom. And then they lost to Pittsburgh 28-27. I mean, they're in the game. They got a shitty spot with Zach Ertz. Zander and I have been talking. Who knows if they got, who knows what happens?
Yeah, look, it all evens out in the wash. The week before they get a ridiculous Hail Mary that has them beat a Bears team that hasn't scored in 23.
Yeah, I agree. But
something to that effect. They did beat up, you go back. We always do this. You look back at the games that they won. They did beat up on Arizona pretty handily.
They killed Arizona. They killed Cleveland, which, the Eagles played Cleveland, but they struggled with Cleveland. They destroyed Carolina, which is a terrible team. On the other hand, they let the Giants stick close. They let the Bears stick close, as you mentioned, with the Hail Mary. That's bad. Although, Chicago at the time had not come off the rails. That may have destroyed Chicago, that play. Because they seem to have just totally lost it since then. Actually, they were playing pretty well to the point where people were saying, are 4 teams from the NFC North going to make the playoffs? Which was, never going to happen because they got to play each other. But there were 4 good teams in that division at the time. So I don't know. PFF has him as the 3rd best quarterback in football. That's pretty freaking good for a rookie.
That's unreal good. I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah, he had to stretch there after the first game, and from like 2 till, I guess, 2 weeks ago, where he was really playing very well, making great decisions. Last week in the Bears game, he didn't play all that well either. It wasn't great in that game. It hasn't been horrible, though. He's not losing the games for them. That's the difference. He's not playing so bad when he's not playing well that he's costing you the game. There might be times, like last week, he missed 2 big throws in that game that he's been making for the most part. Guys that are open, that are big plays, and he's not making them last week. And I don't know if that's because, hey, I've been sacked a lot, I've been hit a lot, the pressure's coming. He was 1 for 8 when Pittsburgh pressured him. They pressured him on 31% of their blitzes. 53% of the time they blitz. More than half the time they sent an extra guy at him. And on 31% of those 53% blitzes, they hit him, they sacked him, and he went 1 for 8. So it's apparent that there was something, that happened in that game. Now, is Vic Fangio going to turn up the heat and start blitzing 53% of the time? I don't know that happened. So what do the Eagles do to try to emulate where he struggled in the Pittsburgh game and say, okay, he was 1 for 8 when he got pressured. How do we emulate that without blitzing? I'm interested to see what Vic Fangio thinks is the right way to go about it with the young quarterback. These old, venerable coordinators, they love when they get these rookie quarterbacks and can confuse them. So what's the look that confuses him?
Well, and I think, you point out, and I wanted to look at it, so I did. I mean, Pittsburgh, and this is including that game, their blitz percentage is 23.2%. So, and that spikes because what were they at in that game, Mike? 50 something percent?
53% Pittsburgh blitzed. On 31% of the 53, they actually deemed pressure.
So, you think about Mike Tomlin and his reputation. He's not a blitz guy. So you're probably game planning. We always talk about game planning and play calling. Tom Brady explained this better than anybody. You're just playing the odds, basically. You're just saying, all right, this is what they typically do. So Mike Tomlin, being the coach he is, you swing it out, and they're probably not prepared for it. Now, to me, the question is, do you learn from that? And you say, all right, does he make the adjustment? Because that's a possibility. Now, the Eagles blitz 20.8% of the time. So they're down at only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams behind them. So that's typically Vic's history, 22%, 23, and they're a little bit lower than that. But
this is where it's interesting because, and we talk about this a lot, John. Washington and Philly are 2 of the best rushing teams in the league. Well, they both play with the lead a lot. So is Washington going to try to run the ball against Philadelphia? So if you're sending blitzes, are they going to run right past where the blitz is coming from? Or do they not trust themselves as a legitimate rushing team? Because their offensive line is not great. They are not good up like that. They have some problems up front. They're starting like a 3rd string tackle. Tanner Scott's in there right now. They kept a lot of – that happened to be the game that was on in our market last week. So they kept a lot of tight end help back there. So that limits the pass game as more, which Vic would say, okay, you're going to keep a tight end back here. Well, we're going to throw more guys in the secondary and have to make the quarterback make more decisions. That's where this chess match gets very interesting.
Yeah, and hey, I'll we're not going to make our predictions today, but I'll say I like Vic Fangio against a rookie quarterback, any rookie quarterback, because he's going to throw some stuff out there that Jayden Daniels hasn't seen before. I guarantee you that. So I kind of like that. I kind of like that matchup from an Eagles perspective. But you and I talked a little bit about blueprints. Everybody's in the blueprint. They showed the blueprint. I'm like, I said it yesterday. First of all right, do what Pittsburgh does. Do you have TJ Watt? Is he under a rock somewhere?
I'll tell you, Washington actually did a good job against Watt. He did
not late in the game.
Not late.
I'll tell you that. Not late in the game.
For the most part of that game, where a lot of the pressure came from, it wasn't coming from him. Now, late in the game, different story. But that's entirety of that game.
That's manufactured pressure. And again, if you're Cliff Kingsbury coming into that game, and let me get so Minnesota obviously leads the league in blitz percentage. Leads the league. They blitz like nobody's business. It's ridiculous. And they lead the league at 38.9%. So if you're Cliff Kingsbury and you're playing Pittsburgh, are you thinking, hey, they're going to blitz 53% of the time?
Likely.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. that, and then comes the in-game adjustments, and perhaps, you know, a rookie quarterback isn't as equipped to handle that as maybe Patrick Mahomes would be, or somebody of that nature. So they called him, but they still only lost the game 28-27.
Well, and by the way, here's another. You know, Washington had a 10-point lead in that game, and they blew the game. So you know, that's the thing is when they had a little bit of pressure that they had to try to play with against a good team, they did not handle it very well. I mean, they should have won that game. Russell Wilson did not have a great game. He only completed about 50% of his passes. But the one thing that he was able to do was some deep balls. And that's where Philadelphia excels. It'll be is Lattimore going to play in the game? I haven't seen anything. Robinson,
I don't think so. Last I saw, Lattimore wasn't going to play, but I can't confirm.
Yeah, he was on the injury report. Obviously, in a short week, it's, you know.
I think Brian Robinson sounds like he's going to try to play, or, you know, because he tried to play last week, and it looked like he was trying to fight them.
Yeah, he's a pretty big part of their offense. I mean, doesn't have quite the impact that Saquon has, but he's a big part of their offense. So getting him back will be big for them if he plays on Thursday night.
Yeah, I thought in Washington, in watching that game, I thought the 10-point lead, Pittsburgh, and by the way, they're at home in the game, and they tightened up a little bit in there. They got a little bit like, is this moment a little too big for us? So I thought that was kind of an interesting takeaway from the way that game went last week. And then Russell Wilson, you know, you get the guy who is just finds way. I think he's got like 40 fourth quarter comebacks, and he makes just a great throw. And that he had 3 touchdown passes. So Washington's secondary vulnerable to the big play, which is why they go out and get Lattimore. And if he's not in this game, that's a big difference.
Yeah, no doubt. But I do think, you know, some of those issues we typically think of Washington as having the poor offensive line. They've gotten a little bit better. As you mentioned, you got to watch some of the injuries, but you know, Biotic is okay. He's a solid center. Sam Cosmi is one of those guys who was, you know, when he played early in his career, he was terrible, but now you wake up and you say, that guy's pretty good. And sometimes guys develop, and he's probably their best offensive lineman. You mentioned the running game and Brian Robinson. Don't forget Austin Eckler. They have a more conventional setup where they use 2 backs.
Right.
And Austin Eckler is, you know, sort of their pass catcher, but he actually plays more than Robinson does, but Robinson's more the hammer guy. And then, you know, these top running teams, look, and I'm not trying to downgrade Brian Robinson. I'm not certainly not trying to downgrade Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry, but the quarterbacks are a big part of it on all 3 of those teams. A big part of it.
Well, look, this Washington team offensively has a lot of the same guys from a year ago where they just weren't very good because of the quarterback. So,
but I mean, in the running game specifically,
because quarterbacks are. I know what you're saying. Yeah,
you have to account the +1 in the running game, and we call it the +1 in the running game for a reason. You have to account for 1 more player than if you're playing Brock Purdy or Kirk Cousins or Matthew Stafford or Sam Darnold or any of these pocket style quarterbacks. You don't have to account for an extra guy who can gouge you in the running game. And that not only can Jayden Daniels gouge you, and Lamar Jackson, obviously, and Jalen Hurts, obviously, but the accounting for them, even when they're not running, opens up the space for Derrick Henry and Saquon and Brian Robinson, etc. And it makes it more difficult. There's no wavering of that. Those teams are effective running the football. They have good running backs, but they have good quarterbacks who can run the football as well. So
that's a big thing there for them. And look, last week I think he only ran for 5 yards. So Washington did a good job of keeping him in check. A lot of that sent the pressure. You know, it's going to be fun to see how this matchup, because as you mentioned at the beginning, how much has Washington matured, you know, over the course of these 9 weeks. Last week they looked like they kind of, whoa, we're in the bright lights. Everybody's paying attention to us now. They kind of had that moment in the game I felt like last week. So it'll be interesting to see what this, being on the road on a Thursday night, short week where you don't get to really practice, how much that affects everything.
I don't like that. I don't like that because
me
this
neither.
game should be. I'd like to see this game with full preparation. See,
Well,
these
you
two
could
teams.
blame Washington. Amazon Prime, they're like, give them Washington. You want an
Yeah, I
NFC
know,
East game?
yeah.
Take Washington. And now it turns
Well,
out
it's
that this is-
nobody's fault. It's just a shame
No,
from the perspective.
because Amazon Prime always gets the reputation that they don't get the best game. So it's like, you want an NFC East game? You get Washington. There you get Philly and Washington. You don't get Philly, Dallas. You get Philly and Washington.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with Dallas in the seasons ahead if they can't turn it around.
They have 4 primetime games out of the next 6.
I know. That's torture, by the way. That's torture. You got to watch Cooper Rush in prime time.
Or Will Grier.
Yeah, Will's gone. Will's
he's with Dallas.
Yeah.
They got I'll tell you, the guy that Washington has too, that I think has flown under the radar for a better part of his career, is Terry McLaurin. He's a good receiver, obviously.
Eagles killer, by the way.
Yeah, and he is an Eagles killer. Yes, he is. He's had many games where he has gashed us in big moments. What do you make of him, Mike? How do you take him out of the game? And then I have a follow-up question here. We had an interesting debate on the show yesterday. Not John and I.
Don't forget, Mike's got a hard out at 9.
So we'll get to that real quick. But just taking away Terry McLaurin, Mike, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mentioned, earlier, he to me is not that 1A, that, big time. He's that next tier down. I guess he would be like that, tier 2 type of receiver. He's been, I think in the games against Philadelphia, I think I read he had like 846 yards, bunch of touchdowns. And by the way, he's got 6 touchdowns this year. I think his career high is 7. I'm every week now, like last week, you want to see if Quinyon Mitchell gets matched up with these guys and how he stacks up. I mean, if you're stacking up against CD Lamb, I would imagine you could stack up against Terry McLaurin. So, yeah, having Quinyon Mitchell, doesn't that change the dynamics for everything? Doesn't it make you feel – it's amazing how having that guy now makes you feel, okay, you have Terry McLaurin, we have Quinyon Mitchell. Like, he's getting to that spot. Now, he's a rookie, and he's going to have a week where maybe you're kind of scratching your head at him. But it certainly makes you feel like, hey, that's their top weapon, and we have our top weapon. Okay,
well,
let's see how this plays
I
out.
just want to add, in all defense of CD Lamb, who's a hell of a player, There were no curtains at AT&T Stadium, and Cooper Rush is throwing them the football.
True.
So while I agree with you that CD Lamb is better than Terry McLaurin, it's going to be more difficult with Jayden Daniels throwing to Terry McLaurin than Cooper Rush throwing to CD Lamb.
That ball in the end zone that CD just didn't see or anything, that's a touchdown. I mean, in any other day, in any other city, that's a touchdown. He's open, the throw, I don't know if it was, but, he didn't even make an attempt for it. So that's a touchdown. Keep that in mind. Zeke Elliott fumbles the ball on like the 1 yard line. He has no business being in an NFL game, let alone fumbling on the 1 yard line. So, that game had some opportunities to have some changes in the outcome or how competitive it was.
Right.
Had the stadium not been engineered poorly, and you're playing a running back who shouldn't be on the field. So keep that in mind. I also like, Jamison Crowder's the kind of guy over the year. I think he's hurt, but he's been a guy that feels like that type of player always hurts you. He just constantly.
Hey, Alameda Zacchaeus is making plays for them.
Right.
Alameda Zacchaeus.
They've got McConkey, Zacchaeus, Noah Brown. So they have these little ancillary guys. But this is where in the past, where a guy like Crowder would get these little chain moving catches, 3rd down and 6, and he just kind of catches it and spins around and gets that, breaks a tackle. This is where having Cooper DeJean kind of changes the dynamics of the guy in the slot catching that ball and then breaking a tackle and getting the first down. If they make that tackle, the thing with Cooper that's been big for this team is the fact that he tackles you, that they have guys that I think the fundamental fact that they tackle him and Bond are good tacklers, that gets lost in the sauce about how bad they were last year. They're that 7-game stretch where not only were they giving up catches where there was 20 yards of wilderness, nobody could tackle them when they got near.
Yeah,
the tackling's really improved.
No, it is. I mean, it's one of the biggest things that's been a difference on the defense. All right, Mike, do this quick for me. I know you got a hard out at 9. Rank these 3 wide receivers: Terry McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb, and Devontae Smith?
Probably Lamb, Smith, McLaurin.
John?
That's correct. Yeah. CD 1, Devontae 2, McLaurin 3 of that group.
I had Smitty third on that list. Would I be way wrong to do that?
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, think if you're, I don't know, if you're looking at numbers, his numbers are going to suffer next to the other guys because of the fact that he plays with Brown. He's not the number one option. Now, you could ask this question. If he was the number one option, like McLaurin is, McLaurin doesn't have a great guy across from him. Would he be able to be as productive as McLaurin is as the number one guy? I don't know what that answer is.
Well, when A.J. Brown's out, we don't look too damn good. Is that an indictment on Smith, or is that because they don't have the game plan?
They score 30 points a game with Brown on the field. It goes down to 17 when he's off.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It shouldn't be that way. AJ's great, but it shouldn't be that way. Yeah, they've had a very difficult time. At Mike Gill Show, the Sports Bash, 2 to 6 every weekday. If you're local in South Jersey, tune in there, 97.3 ESPN South Jersey. Yeah, go to work, Mike. I know you got the heart out, but we appreciate it as always.
Very important meetings. Very important meetings.
Important meetings, movers and shakers. Get some business done, Mike. I will say, as you're leaving, I don't think you give enough credit to the other Commanders receivers. Noah Brown's having a decent year. I mentioned Olamide Dynamic Brown. He dropped a touchdown, but not the week to say it. And Luke McCaffrey. They got a bunch of receivers who can play at least a little bit.
They're better than I give them credit for then.
We'll see how it plays out. Mike, thanks for joining, man. Make sure you guys follow Mike at Mike Gill Show. We appreciate you, Mike.
See ya.
Thanks, bud.
Good stuff from Mike Gill there on Birds 365. Johnny Mac, I got a lot of shit yesterday on the afternoon show. I'm sitting here and I'm like, people were telling me Devontae Smith's better than CeeDee Lamb. They made me sound like
come on. That people hate the Cowboys. Yeah, CD's really good.
Yeah, but why can't people remove? I mean, look, I know you have glasses. I like good football. CeeDee Lamb had nearly 2,000 yards last year.
CeeDee Lamb is phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, come on. That's stop. I'm on my just stop it with that.
John, we lost our opening segment due to some technical errors. You can see John has the Kelly green screen because the tech errors of this morning have plagued the show.
Not our tech errors, by the way. Get your stuff together, StreamYard.
Yeah, not ours. Nothing that we did. We were about to fire, and I'm like, whoa, what the hell's going on?
See if I can get it up. Let's see if they fixed anything. I doubt it. It's probably going to be a situation where got to reboot. Nothing. Come on, StreamYard.
Nothing for Johnny Mac. Still looks good, though, with that green background. We appreciate that. Appreciate everybody in the chat, John. Had a good crowd despite us getting on here late, so we appreciate all of you guys. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Prince Swayze checks him in a super chat. He says, I think he's talking about Terry. He'll be going against Q, Zander. Well, Prince, I mean, we don't play man coverage much. So if they move Terry to the other side, he's not going to.
The Eagles aren't traveling Quinyon Mitchell, Prince. Yeah. They haven't done it to date. They're not going to do it. If they travel at all, it will be Darius Slay. He's a rookie. He's doing great. Don't skip steps. There's no need to skip steps. They're not traveling Quinyon Mitchell. Why? They have the number 2 defense in the NFL. It's working.
We'll see.
Don't fix what isn't broken.
I have a weird feeling that Olamide Zaccheaus is going to have some impact on this game tomorrow night. We will see how it plays out. But they got some good players. I mean, Jayden Daniels is obviously playing really good football. You heard what Ron Jaworski had to say, which I thought was a pretty wild comment from a guy who's, in NFL films, who studies a lot of tape, who's been around the game, who was a quarterback at the highest level, obviously, in Philly. I thought that was an interesting comment. But we'll see. Let's get to our commercial break. Johnny Mac, Maybe a green screen fix will happen in the break. We will see.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And we'll have Brandon Lee Gouton, everyone, coming up in about 20 minutes here on the show. Make sure you guys smash that like button before we get to our break. Let me tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. You can see I put the promo code on the screen. Go to betus.com.pa and use this promo code, YouTube150. It's there on your screen. That gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000 total. So deposit less and bet with more at betus.com. That's betus.com.pa. betus.com.pa. They have the fastest payouts in the industry, 24/7 customer support, and they'll even give you your own custom account manager. So go check out BetUS, and a big thanks to them for sponsoring the show here. We'll be back in 3 minutes on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.